When CBN has been able to actually crash the spread between the parallel market and the official market, I think at that juncture, CBN might try to actually float the Naira.
Bureau de change operators face more challenges with central bank's new order slashing the Naira exchange rate from 390 Naira to 360 Naira to the dollar. We're so glad to have you join us this Thursday morning for TVC Breakfast. I am Ngozi Alebu.
Top of the morning to you, and Busolami Tunwashe also coming up.
Let us not act on this next until we hear from the president what happened to Mago.
Face-off between the Nigerian Senate and the presidency continues as lawmakers delay confirmation of presidential nominees for the position of resident electoral commissioners.
You see, Nigeria is actually a prolific manufacturer. If nothing else, we produce 170 million of the most adaptive, industrious, economic unit on earth.
More prominent Nigerians are calling for better patronage of made-in-Nigeria goods, and they say Nigeria can work with proper reorientation.
We must look at policies that will actually add value and improve on our economy instead of outsourcing services and getting our people out of job.
Time to talk trade and investment in Nigeria as we review the country's trade policy today on Talk Time.
TVC Breakfast discussions begin in a moment. One of the most inspiring statements I have heard in a long time, that Nigeria produces 170 million industrious, hardworking people on earth. And that in itself should make anyone want to wake up in the morning and just show up and give their best.
And so you're proud to be a Nigerian, is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. Make it in Nigeria, use it in Nigeria, or make what you use what you make, and make what the world values. Those words should be written, they should be written in stone, so that we can be reminded every day. All right, you're welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's TVC Breakfast, the Thursday edition. Now, let's start off with our first big story. The Central Bank of Nigeria Tuesday crashed the rate at which it sells the Naira to Bureau de change to 360 Naira to the dollar.
It has also directed the BDC's operators to sell to end users at not more than 362 Naira to the dollar. This development comes a day after directing deposit money banks in the country to sell foreign exchange obtained from it to retail end users at 360 Naira to $1 for invisibles. That's talking about your medicals and your travel allowance.
Yes, indeed. Now, CBN spokesman Isaac Okorafor said the objective of the new forex sale policy is to ensure convergence of the rates in the interbank and BDCs. Okorafor warned that there will be sanctions for erring dealers. Now, meanwhile, CBN said $100 million offered to authorized forex dealers in the interbank wholesale window was fully subscribed at Tuesday's auction. All right, joining us now is a financial analyst, Emeka Obieri. Good morning. It's always good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Ngozi. It's
Good
my pleasure
morning.
to be here.
Maybe we should start with the last part there, you know, the oversubscription of funds.
Was it over?
That's, yeah, that's what they report.
Yes.
What does it indicate?
It indicates that the demand has started coming up again. And again, it's in the wholesale market, the interbank market. Remember, there's also another market where the CBN plays, the intervention market for some critical sectors like the oil and gas. And but I think overall, we are getting there. And the recent pronouncement giving money to the BDCs at 360 is good. Remember, before now, they were giving money at 383 forward for them to sell at 399. And commercial banks were giving money at 20% spread above interbank, which is about 375. Of course, there was still room for arbitrage, but by converging those rates, giving the deposit money banks at 360 the same rate that are given to the BDCs. It will help us to control the issues of arbitrage, people trying to short circuit the system. And just like we pointed out, it was oversubscribed, which means that we're actually bottoming out, getting to the real intrinsic value of the Naira. Which would be somewhere around now? You remember last time, about 3 weeks ago, I mentioned here when I was at your studio, that the true value of the Naira is between 340, 360. You know, of course, the Naira has taken a huge bashing because of the activities of speculators and, you know, money dealers and, of course, the topsy-turvy activities at the Apex Bank. But kudos to the Central Bank of Nigeria. They seem to be getting it right.
Okay, so what's the profit margin now, talking about the BDCs?
The BDCs is 2 Naira spread. From what you saw there, 360, they will sell at 360. And that should be the actual margin, 1 Naira, 2 Naira. You know, when you have arbitrage windows where people can make 100 Naira, 50 Naira, that is where you create distortions in the market. It's not just enough to get, there should also be room to enforce, to ensure that they don't go above the windows. Remember, there was a time that it was rumored that the SS were cracking down on the BDCs.
Yes, indeed. They did.
Because of the activities of the trial. Of course, you remember why? They were giving money, some of them were giving monies at a certain rate. They were expected to sell at a certain rate, but they went above it because they wanted to over-profiteer. And of course, it also brings us to the question, how are these BDCs selected in terms of who gets what? Yeah. How many BDCs do we have in Nigeria operating? How do each and every one of them assess these available funds?
Those are the
what are the scientific modalities adopted to ensure that there is a level playing ground for all? It's no longer a case of man, no man. Who owns these BDCs? So these are issues that we must have to put into play. Nigeria is a very beautiful place, just like Ashiwaju mentioned. But the most important is that we must make laws. We must be able to enforce laws, and those responsible for enforcing those laws or making those laws must ensure that there's a level playing ground for each and every one of the 170 million industrious and hardworking Nigerians.
Yes. Okay, you know what? Let's take our first break on the show this morning, and when we come back, of course, so many more questions for you. Right, stay with us right after this.
Glad to have you back. You're on to TVC Breakfast, and we're on to our very first big story this morning, looking at the BDCs and the new directives coming from the CBN at what they should sell the dollar to you if you need to get dollars from the BDC. And our guest in the studio is a financial analyst, Nemeka Obiariri. Beyond the fact that the price is pegged, before now the BDCs were crying that what they get is not even enough, that they get $8,000 weekly and they would rather have $15,000. Is their cry justifiable?
One of the things that I've asked, one of the questions we have asked in this market is, why must the BDCs depend on the central bank alone as the source of dollar supply? First of all, like we have always advocated, the whole systems, the whole processes of approving and licensing these BDCs need to be revalued. Over time, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, remember there was a time we had about 2,000, 1,000 BDCs. From all of a sudden, under the regime of Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, the number increased from 1,000 to over 6,000. And we had Class A and Class B BDCs. What was the modalities? What was the criteria used in licensing them? The Central Bank of Nigeria should not be the only source of supply to the BDCs. There are other autonomous sources. They should also devise ways, structurally, innovatively, on how they can source for BDCs.
But isn't that because the CBN, who should be the regulatory body in the first place, did not step in at the appropriate time and, you know, putting systems in place? The diaspora funds, for example,
exactly.
$22 to $35 billion. Imagine if that could actually go through the BDC.
Exactly. Of course, the whole idea of the BDC was to create more retail ends, more retail outlets for those that want to source for dollar for invisible transactions. But again, in even crafting the modalities and the structures of how they will operate, there should be latitude and room for them to look for other sources. They must not depend on the Central Bank of Nigeria. And again, we must also be very, very careful. Remember that over the last 3-4 weeks, since the CBN started intervening in the market, we've spent over $2 billion.
Yes, indeed.
Of course. Is that a fair assessment, talking about the BDCs now and asking them to look for source for dollars some other way? Is that a fair assessment even before now that the CBN too didn't even have access to forests, scarcity of forests? Is that a fair assessment?
To be honest, yes, the CBN has been supplying them with dollar. If I'm a BDC operator, I own a BDC. Innovatively, I must devise ways of getting dollars. And of course, in regulating them too, they must also allow them that latitude to source for dollars.
But do you know what it means if you have to go and source for the dollar yourself, then the end users will pay through their noses to get dollars?
That is why they are there. The whole essence of the intervention by the Central Bank of Nigeria is to ensure that they control the market. It's like in the oil and gas sector, like the PPMC. The PPMC from time to time bring in products. Because if you allow the operators, every entrepreneur is out there to maximize profit. Every company is out there to maximize shareholders' return. If there are no regulatory interventions, if there are no regulatory checks, the average entrepreneur, the average capitalist will always want to maximize profit.
But if you look at what the interventions of the CBN right now, asking the commercial banks right now, the interbank rate, what we have, end users will even get it cheaper from the banks now than they will get it from the BDCs. Then another thing, okay, the banks now can now open retail centers at the airport and some other strategic places. It seems to me that the CBN is edging them out of the market gradually.
No, Bisola, no. The huge demand for the dollar in the invisible market, for the invisible goods and services, is quite huge. How many deposit money banks we even have in Nigeria? Just 24. How many outlets do they have there? There are thousands and hundreds of thousands of Nigerians that require dollar every day. Apart from those that go for medical tourism, apart from those that demand for a dollar to pay school fees, there are traders who travel to China, to the Far East, to import things. $10,000, $20,000, $40,000. Those do not need to go to banks to open Form M's and to go through all the whole process of getting PFIs, opening L's and all those stuff. Yeah. Those ones will carry their cash, go report it at the custom point, enter the aircraft, go to China, go to Dubai, buy things and bring it in.
Well, there seems to be this attitude towards the BDCs. They're always at the receiving end. I mean, you have the central, as of last year, the CBN at one point was, giving them dollars. At some point it stopped and then it goes back again. And, there's back and forth, back and forth. How is it affecting the businesses of the BDCs themselves and, of course, the economy as a whole?
For somebody to do a business plan, set up an office to run a BDC, I'm sure the person will have taken into consideration other contingencies. No businessman goes into business with a fixated mind that they will only have one supplier or one buyer. I'm sure that they will have thought about it. Assuming for any reason, in simulation, CBN decide not to give us dollar. What do we do to survive? And I'm sure they don't have only one market. They don't have only one person buying products from them. The same way, they will look at what happens if our one supply source, the regulator, dries up. How do we get dollar? They should consider that. The same way they will also consider, if we have 10 customers today, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H customer, and tomorrow this A, B, C, D to H customers refuse to buy dollar from us, how do we create more customers? You see, the whole essence of Central Bank of Nigeria licensing BDCs is to, like I said, is to create retail outlets.
Yes.
Now, if the argument is that the regulation or the regulatory framework is not allowing them to explore other areas, now that is where the CBN comes in. They have an organization, the Association of Bureau de Change Operators. Yes, they can meet with the Central Bank of Nigeria and discuss with them, hey, this is what is hindering our businesses.
Yes, they did.
Do you allow us?
They met this year.
In fact,
now,
they've been meeting.
I will tell you this. The Central Bank of Nigeria, as Apex Bank and the regulator of the monetary policy leg of the economy, tries as much as possible, one thing, to ensure financial sector stability.
Yes.
One of the challenges we've had in the FX market has been the issue of instability. You're not sure how much you will buy the Naira, the dollar tomorrow. You don't know how much it will be the next 2 weeks. But over the last 3-4 weeks, you can, to some level of estimation and certainty, say, this is how much I'm going to get dollar. Like you rightly pointed out, the last auction, the last intervention they did was fully oversubscribed. It shows you one thing: the market has bottomed out. Like yesterday in the private market, it inched up. It moved from 282 to 382 to 387. What does it show you? We have gotten to a place where we have to be very, very careful in how we manage it. Now we've spent over $2 billion intervening.
Yeah, 2.45 billion.
Remember, Providence has been good to us. The supply side of our major source of foreign exchange revenue, the crude oil, has been a bit stable because of the interventions of the federal government. They've been in negotiation with the Niger Delta Avengers and all the stakeholders in the Niger Delta region. Yeah. The global market prices for the crude oil has also been very stable. Yes. But it's actually, if you watch the trend, it has actually moved down from $55 to about $51.99 yesterday.
Why the question of sustainability on the part of the CBN. I'm coming,
Ngozi. Now you look at it.
Yes.
It closed at 52. The US, the Brent closed at 52. The US crude at 50. And if you watch developments in the market, remember what resulted in this was the cut in supply by some OPEC countries. Saudi Arabia reduced output by 486,000 barrels a day. Yeah. Interestingly, Russia joined and reduced by 550,000 barrels. From the OPEC cartel that controls 40% of the supply market, we had a reduction of about 1.2 million. If you add it to the Russian reduction of 550,000 barrels, it means about 2 million barrels. Venezuela, which is one of the members of the cartel that is always breaking from the chain, does not have the capacity to ramp up crude. Now, but you should ask yourself this question. This is a global supply market of 96 million barrels a day. We only have 2 million cut. Yeah. And of course, this cut will last only for 6 months based on initial agreement. And we are in March going to April. By May, June, we don't know what may happen. And if you look at some of the pronouncement of the President of America, Donald Trump, first of all, he has signed an executive order opening up the Keystone XL pipeline that will enable America bring in the heavy crude from Canadian sand oil deposit all the way from Alberta, Calgary to North Dakota to the Gulf of Mexico refineries. Okay,
so fast track to what we have.
Now, let me come.
In the next 6 months.
Not in the next 6 months. In the next 2 months.
Okay, fine. No, you might even still say that since you still have a foreign reserve of $31 billion, you say, okay, fine, maybe you can stretch and flex a little. But say in the next few months, what happens?
That's what I'm saying. If you look at this, of course, he has also signed an executive order refossilizing America. What are we doing by refossilizing America? Allowing them to do more of coal. And even the executive orders will allow oil drillers to prospect in federal land, even in deep water, in deep waters, which will increase supply from that angle. So over time, in the next 2 months, of course, the current price is a bit roughly balancing because
so the outlook is that we may still be vulnerable.
We may still be vulnerable. So what the CBN is doing is, as much as possible, trying to balance the situation to ensure that we don't have a tailspin again, this thing going off out of control.
And also we are looking at other means of getting dollars. We are looking at some remittances. We are looking at the FDI and the FDI.
It is not the job of the Central Bank of Nigeria
to do that.
The Central Bank, I will tell you this, I'm so excited with what they are doing. Over the last 4 weeks, you know, we've been so hard on them. Personally too, you will see that sometimes I will tell you, I've written tons about some of their, but they are getting it right, and we must commend them. It's our job. If they are not getting it right, to poo-poo them. If they are getting it right, to commend them. But those are the fiscal end.
Okay, so we'd like to know what those loopholes are that may create some kind of real turbulence. What are those? When we come back from this break, let's remind our viewers that you can continue to watch the breakfast show on TVC Nigeria, on DSTV 418, Go TV 45, Free TV 701.
And it starts at, it is 270 and start times 370. Nemeka is very much in the house. Stay with us. Okay.
Yes, indeed. You're welcome back. You're watching TVC Breakfast, and we're looking at the BDCs, the Bureau de Change, and the Forex Challenge. The Central Bank of Nigeria, the CBN, has been coming up with a number of policies. Lately, it's pegged the amount that the BDCs can sell at $3.60 to the dollar. right?
No, they sell.
It's selling to the BDCs at 360 to the dollar.
Yes.
And says the BDCs should sell
to the
at
end
nothing
users.
more than 362 to the
giving them just
user,
a
of course,
2% profit margin.
2 Naira profit margin.
margin.
2 Naira margin. Okay, so now this whole plan to ensure a convergence between the parallel market and the official interbank rate, how effective is the moves that the CBN is putting in place now?
The monetary policies, the monetary end. The fiscal end is what we should be looking at. What are we doing? We heard the Jagaban, the Ashiwaju mentioned about Nigeria. We have 170 million industrious, hard-working, resilient people. We have the capacity to grow our economy. Now I will give you instances of what the fiscal end will do. We import a lot of junks into Nigeria that we can actually produce here. I'll give you an example. The US, under the African Growth Opportunity Act, allowed African countries, African economies that can produce textile and garments to ship them into America tariff-free. America imports over $100 to $120 billion worth of garment and textile materials. Vietnam exports over $9 billion worth of garment. Bangladesh, little countries that are not even as big as Nigeria. We have some of the biggest garment and the shoe market and leather market in Abia State, in Onitsha. Now, what stopped? You see, the governor.
Well, the vice president has been going.
The senator representing that zone and the governor
of light towards that direction.
I will tell you, the senator representing, I think, one of the zones in Abia State, and the governor have been at the forefront of letting everybody that cares to listen that Abia State has the potentials to cover that market. Now, every year we import over 4 to 6 billion naira worth of garments from Pakistan, from India, for our military, for our police, the boots, the belt. These are things that can be done in Aba. What stopped the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment and the federal government of Nigeria partnering with the states to open up industrial clusters in Aba?
That's a question we'll be
asking.
We have
the minister, over 100,000 to 200,000 artisans in that market.
I know for sure that right now there is an initiative going on now.
What stopped us from making a law, making it absolutely banning all these agencies from importing any of those garments from abroad and making it compulsory that they must do it in Aba? And what do we do? When you put in place this order, because let me tell you why they go to those countries. It will enable them pardon voices, get PFIs, and do whatever they want to do, shenanigans. But if you put such laws in place, whatever we can produce in this country, we must be able to produce it. Take, for instance...
But shouldn't it be a gradual thing? I mean, can you do it this in one fell swoop? Hold on. You have 50,000 boots of the military were actually ordered recently. And that was a very good one. That
came from Aba.
Yeah, that came from Aba.
Because can I tell you something?
Yes.
If you go to Turkey, you go to Dubai, most of the guys who are producing some of these things, they throw it back to Nigeria, are Nigerians. Go to those markets. The problem we have is that we have those at agencies who do not even go out there to see what is happening. You ask yourself, those guys have environment that can enable them, technology that can enable them produce in mass. Yeah. It does not take skyrocket science to do this. It's 3-6 months. We'll put it together and it will start producing. And it's a gradual process. I'll give you an example. Now, last time I came in here, I mentioned the fact that Gary increased because of the transport cost. Central Bank has done the right thing. If you look now, they are intervening in the oil and gas sector to ensure that the product comes at a cheap price. As at last 3 weeks, the average price of the AGO was 214 per litre. As I'm talking to you, it's about 180. CBN has crashed it through intervention in that market. But there's a limit to what the CBN can do.
So the physical side, the physical side is key. We'll get that point. Okay, let's take what we have on the prompter now.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have to end this particular segment. Nemeko Berry, financial analyst.
All right.
Thank you so much. It's always a delight to have you. We look forward to having you again as we try to, simplify and explain these things to Nigerians.